And what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players Podcast. It is episode 198, and we are one game away from MLS Cup 2023. Later in the week, we're going
We're
to
no
give.
games away from it.
Well,
It's
we're
the
one.
next game.
All right, whatever. Listen, didn't ask, don't care. Mister, complain about everything, and then whatever. Gonna fight you anyway
Just
with
a
this episode.
technicality.
This episode's gonna be a. If you've messed this up, you're gonna be bad. If you couldn't tell by the title that you've clicked on already, what better way to prepare for the MLS Cup Final than reliving the top 10 greatest MLS Cup Finals in history? We're going to go back. We're going to give our picks. There have been 27 of them so far. We're going to go to 28 here, 26 going on to 27. I don't know. I can't count these days. So we're going to go through. We're going to give our top 10s. I will tell you my criteria was very simple: excitement and entertainment. I didn't look at anything about how the teams got there. I didn't look about anything about if the guys were underdogs who made a deep run. I just looked at, if I watch this game from start to finish right now, would I be entertained?
Okay. Very simple.
How many stats did you pull out to make
I
this
I didn't
list?
I didn't pull any stats. All I did was I pulled together the scores, the times when the goals were scored, and then if there was any special meaning behind the win. It's kind of like the gist of what I looked at.
Well, the special meaning, by the way, is that they won MLS Cup. I don't know how much more
All right,
special
well,
you need
there's
to be.
there's like another level of special sometimes.
Well, you are another level of special, but that's a different
Oh,
story.
nice. Got me.
Um, so before we get into picking some of these, I want to know, of course, 198 times. Scarf of the week, baby. I'm assuming you got an MLS Cup themed one.
Yeah, of course. I've got the crew for current MLS finalist in this upcoming final game. I don't own an LAFC one, so I couldn't do them. So it had to be the crew. At some point, I should get an LAFC scarf. I feel like they've deserved it.
Yeah. I was just looking. I only have one. It's the Seattle Sounders one. It's one of my least favorite scarves because it's so boring.
Oh yeah, I have that one
You,
too. It is
yeah,
a
you
really boring scarf.
you couldn't even tell it's a Seattle scarf unless you look at the very, very tiny stitched on logo.
Yep.
Um, so instead, I went with the other team in the final this year,
It's perfect. We lined that up
LAFC,
perfectly. It's almost like we planned it.
but we didn't.
We didn't. I know. That's how
We got
elite we
the
are. There's
nope.
nothing there. There you
There you
go.
go. It's on, one on each side. So
I like that scarf. That's nice.
it's clean, it's easy, it's simple, but it's appealing. So
I
I'm
may
all.
steal that. I may well not steal it, like rob you, but I may go get one myself.
You couldn't rob me. Grace would stop you.
No, she wouldn't.
She'd let me know you're here at least,
She
and
would,
then
but
I'd stop you.
then she would just wag her tail and jump on me.
All right. As we always do, I've got an honorable mention. Um, I don't know how many of you, if you have any at all.
I only put two.
Okay, I'll let you go first.
Okay. I have gone for 2012 LA Galaxy versus Houston, and I've gone 2008 Columbus versus Red Bull.
How dare you?
Listen,
How
Red Bull
dare you
lost.
mention that?
Yeah, okay, okay. So you were upset. I thought you were going to be upset that I didn't put it higher, but I guess you're upset
No,
that I
how
mentioned it at
dare
all.
that? If we were ranking these 1 to 27, that would be number 30. So kind of ridiculous we even had the audacity to put that game on there.
Oh, of course I
Um,
had to.
even as an honorable mention, you are fired from the podcast for 4 episodes. You are missing episode 200. I do not care.
That's all right. The guests can sub in for me.
And it will be a much better episode that way.
I
Punishment
wouldn't argue
fits
with
the
that.
crime.
I wouldn't
Punishment
argue.
fits the crime.
Yeah.
Um, both good games. The one that I added was 2005 New England versus LA. LA winning 1-0 because the goal came in extra time, and it was a quite an enjoyable match to kind of watch through, very end to end, but just didn't have the same impact as some of the other ones that I have on here. So
Yeah, I understand that.
I guess I'll throw it over to you because I'm a good guy. I'll let you go ahead and pick your number 10.
Okay. I imagine you're gonna have this one on your list and a bit higher,
Oh gosh.
but at 10, I've gone for 2004 DC versus KC. High scoring game, 3-2, definitely very exciting. Lots of goals, and honestly, a lot of goals in a short amount of time. The only thing for me, so I looked at a few different things. I know I kind of like summarized what I looked at before, but I looked to see like, is it a high scoring game? Were there late goals? Did it go to extra time penalties? Was there any like big achievement with this MLS Cup? While this game was high scoring and it did have a no, sorry, it didn't have any late goals. It was the only box it checked for me was that it was high scoring, which is obviously, an important box, but um pretty much within a matter of 7 minutes, DC kind of wrapped up the game. And from that point on, they just held on to the lead and saw it out. But obviously, 5 goals in an MLS Cup final is rare. It's one of the few times we've seen that many goals in a cup final, which is why it is on my top 10 list.
I think it's a good pick. It's actually not on my list because none of those goals happened like, late in the game.
Yeah, it
There
was early.
was
I
there was the
understand.
red card in there that led to the penalty, and then they just bunkered in and held on. And again, had it been something like a 90th minute one uh, to win the game when you're down a man, yeah, it gets in there. But 5 goals is cool, but there are other games I think that were a little bit better. For me, I started begrudgingly at the number 10 spot with the 2021 final between Portland and New York City.
Love
And
that.
it's only for the way that the game ended. It was awful. I'm not gonna lie. The game itself was pretty bad. New York City got on the board first in the 40th minute after Alexander Kyans nodded a ball down towards Steve Clark that snuck under his arm, something I'll probably want back. Then 9 minutes into the second half, Maxi hit the crossbar. That was literally the only thing that happened in the first, 90 plus minutes of the game. And then up in the 94th minute, Yimi Chara heading the ball into the box. Mabiala nods it down for Niazgoda. Niazgoda's shot blocked, falls right to Felipe Mora, who fires it home in the dying seconds, sends the game to extra time. Providence Park goes limbs up, absolute scenes. Maxime Chanot running to everybody who would listen to yell at them for missing a foul that wasn't called. Uh, Heads to extra time. Portland all over New York City in extra time. Nothing to show for it. Paredes denied brilliantly by Sean Johnson in the 112th minute. Nothing coming from it. PKs we go. Sean Johnson saves 2 of the 4 shots that he sees. And New York City wins their first ever MLS Cup and the world's biggest joke of a championship banner. So,
Had to slide that one in there, didn't you?
slide what in there? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know.
Uh,
Probably because you couldn't see it.
Absolute. So it was super boring, right? Sorry, clever. Really, I like that. That was good. It slid under the
Thanks.
radar there. I had to process it. Super boring game, but the ending was one of those ones where it's like, oh my god, something's happening, which is why it's number 10. Right?
I will reserve judgment. Do you want me to go next on
And
9?
go to number 9.
All right, so I I would almost guarantee that nine's not going to be on your list just based on the criteria that you were talking about. But for me, number 9 is the 2009 MLS Cup between RSL and LA Galaxy. It finished 5-4 in penalties for RSL. And one of the main reasons I put it on here was just because this was a massive upset in this MLS Cup final. This was the start of the Beckham era. This wasn't peak LA Galaxy during this era because they went and won like 3 after this year finished up. But this was still a very strong LA Galaxy team versus an RSL team that finished the regular season with a losing record. Went on a run in the playoffs, faced Beckham and Donovan in the final, and was able to come back from a first half goal from the Galaxy to tie it, take it to extra time, and then the penalties where they won at 5-4 in pens. And also during this game, I was able to find a little bit of the stats on it. There were 32 total shots in this game. So it was probably, I mean, I didn't watch the game in its entirety, but I would imagine it was probably not a snooze fest 1-1. It seems like teams were getting opportunities and firing shots off. So seems like it was exciting. I picked it, I think, mainly for the upset that happened, but seems like a big time MLS Cup win for our RSL.
I will reserve judgment.
Ooh, I'm surprised.
At
You said you
number
didn't.
9,
Okay, go ahead.
I've got the 2002 final, LA versus New England. And it's one we've actually covered before in our MLS History Retold series. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. But after 3 failed attempts to win the cup, 2 of which were in extra time, LA needed to win. And this game, again, was pretty bad throughout regular time with lots of chances going amiss. MLS 1.0 field, MLS 1.0 player balls bouncing up all over the place, missing easy chances. But as we entered extra time, Kobe Jones misses a left-footed shot by inches to start that first period. Then it was followed by an incredible Carlos Ruiz bicycle kick that was saved 10 minutes later. Second extra time comes in. Ruiz given another marvelous opportunity to finish the match. But I believe it's Andy Brown who was in goal for New England, made a brilliant save to keep it level down to his left. 2 minutes later, New England would see themselves get agonizingly close as a deflected effort hits the bar and stays out. And then with 8 minutes to go, LA catches New England on the counter, and Ruiz is played in on goal, and his one-touch finish sneaks by Brown into the bottom corner, and LA finally wins a cup on a golden goal in extra time. Again, for me, boring in the beginning, really exciting in the end, and then this is one of the ones that I did include as a big meaningful match, which I'm sure it's higher up on your list for that reason. But for me, I did bring in a little bit of the, you know, at the fourth time of asking, they did it. So that bumped them up to 9 instead of 10, for example.
I think you're just looking for any opportunity to try and dunk on New England right now because you have a beef with New England.
All right, here's the deal. This is an MLS Cup Finals list. There is an the percentage is impossible that you aren't dunking on New England because they are like Red Bull times 10.
That's
Every
true.
time they get to a final, they lose. So, and it's not intentional. It's just the way it is.
It's always against the Galaxy too.
Yeah, I know. Really did. Galaxy or Houston, right?
What are we up to? Number 8.
This will be your number 8.
This will be a quick one. My number 8 is 2021, the NYC Portland game. Pretty much the exact same reasons as you. Just the 94th minute goal was sheer chaos, and it was so exciting to watch.
Limbs.
Yeah, I mean, to your point though, it was a really boring game up to that point, but then, I mean, that kind of all gets erased when you score a 94th minute equalizer to send it to extra time, and then it eventually got it to PKs where NYC won. But lots of shots in this game as well. 19 shots for Portland, 13 for NYC. So, but yeah, to your point, I think mainly being carried by that last minute goal for Portland.
I didn't pull any stats for this episode. Here's the number of shots for every team in every MLS Cup final from here to 96.
I couldn't find all of them. I found it for some of them because it was in the Wikipedia article. So I grabbed it.
My number 8 is also relatively quick because it is 2009 RSL versus LA. The David Beckham's Galaxy versus Javi Mo's RSL, with Javi Mo having to come out 20 minutes into the game. From there, LA dominates the game, and in the 41st minute, Donovan plays an inch-perfect cross to Mike McGee, who taps it past Nick Rimando, 1-0 lead. Then RSL flips a switch and comes out, forcing 2 1v1 saves versus Donovan Ricketts, one of which hurt his hand to the point where he needed to be taken out for what Red Bull fans can only call a legend of a goalkeeper, the substitute, Josh Saunders. He who played in the 7-0 game. Sorry, I have to throw that in there again. In the 63rd minute, there's a scramble in the box. Some iffy defending found Ricketts out of his position, and the ball falls to Robbie Finley, former LA Galaxy striker, fires home into the empty net, levels a score. They would trade half chances, but get to extra time, and nothing really happened next time either. So it goes to PKs, and the PKs were the reason it's a little bit higher here is one because of the fact that there was the injury that changed goalkeepers, but two, this lineup of penalty shootout is unreal. Beckham goes first, followed by Clint Mathis at RSL. Second shooter for LA is the man, the myth, the legend, the behind the back pass master himself, Greg Berhalter. Robbie Finley, they both go and score as well. Beckerman and the LA shooter, I forget his name, both would miss. Landon Donovan would step up, touch the ground, say a prayer, bless himself, then blast the ball into row Z. Ned Grabavoy tucks his away, gives RSL the lead. Mike McGee scores, meaning that Andy Williams, if he scores, wins the cup. Josh Saunders dives and holds on to his penalty and just rolls it back to him. The most embarrassing way to miss a penalty ever. Step back up. Both shooters score in round 6, and Nick Rimando saves Edson Buttle's shot in round 7, meaning that when Robbie Russell, the defender, steps up, slots it home, drops to his knees, celebrates the 09 Cup for RSL. The penalty shootout was insane, and the game, while it could have been a little bit better, it made up for it, that penalty shootout, because that the lineup and the way that it happened was insane.
Good stuff.
Yeah. What do you got at 7?
My number 7 is the 1998 Chicago Fire versus DC United.
Okay.
On the surface, the game itself was not really anything too exciting. Chicago scored in the 29th and the 45th, and it finished that same scoreline at the end of the game. However, I had to get it on here because Chicago has done something that no other team in MLS history has been able to do, and that is win the title in your expansion season. And I know Houston technically kind of did it, but it wasn't truly an expansion. It was just a relocation. So it's not exactly the same. And I mean, you could say the same. Like if St. Louis were to have done it this year, go on and won the title, that is, in my opinion, undebatably better than Chicago winning it in 1998 when there were only like 10 teams. But the fact of the matter is, no team has been able to do it. Only Chicago. So while the game itself wasn't super exciting, I had to get it on here at least towards the end of my list, just for the fact that they were able to create MLS history that still has not been able to be replicated.
I don't disagree with that. I think that's a good point. If I was doing that based off of your criteria, it would definitely be in there, right? The winning in your expansion season is unheard of, especially in MLS. So, don't disagree, but it just wasn't an exciting game. Like, it was a good game, and the season was stellar because they did the double in that season. They were one of the best attacking teams in that season. I mean, it was great. I think weren't they like a goal away from a treble at that point, or that might have been 2003.
No, I think you might be right.
I know they were really close in one of those years, but again, a super team in your first year is unheard of. So I think it's a great pick.
Yeah, they oh no, they won US Open Cup in 98. Maybe they missed the Supporter Shield?
They did.
Is that what you were talking about? Maybe I was misunderstanding.
No. I think it was 2003. They lost the Open Cup final, I think, in by like a goal or something like that.
They like just missed it twice.
Yeah, they were very close.
Oh no, yeah, I had the wrong year. Never mind. Ignore me. Who's your number 7?
At number 7, and this one might be controversial, but based on my criteria, I had to put it this low. But it's 2016 Seattle versus Toronto. The year of the save heard round the world and the day of Stephen Fry. And the reason it's as low as it is because this game sucked. This game was disgustingly bad. 1 minute into the game, Stephen Fry did really well to make a save on Josie Altidore, tip it wide at full stretch. The game would end 0-0, or the half would end 0-0. And then early in the second half, Giovinco shanks a chance into the side netting. And that's pretty much all that happened until the 92nd minute. 92nd minute, a corner gets swung in, and it's knotted down, free, bouncing in the 6-yard box. Stephen Fry comes out, punches the ball away from diving Josie Altidore, takes the hit, makes a save that forces OT. He doesn't make that save, they're out. And this game isn't anywhere close to to this list. Nothing really happens in extra time until the 107th minute, where we see what is possibly the best save in MLS history. Not playoff history, MLS history. Tosaint Ricketts beats Romain Torres down the line and floats a ball in towards the head of Josie Altidore. He doesn't even really head the ball. He just lets it hit him and go back where it came from. As the ball is moving, Stephen Fry has to stop, change his position, shuffle, and go full stretch with his left hand. He grabs a ball that's behind him and throws it out like Tim Howard when he was at Everton. Grabs it, tosses it out. A save that to this day is one of the best I've ever seen in real time. I watched that game in my dorm room. I remember this, and I remember going, "Oh my god," because it was the most insane save I've ever seen in my life. That save in and of itself forces penalties. Both goalkeepers made a save in penalties, but the deciding moment was Justin Morrow hitting the crossbar and Roman Torres stepping up and blasting it down the middle to secure MLS Cup. The reason why it's a bit lower is because the game was so like the actual game was so bad, and the fact that the way the game ended was Morrow missing instead of Fry making the save. Um, but that save in and of itself puts it on this list for me.
I don't think I'll be honest. I don't think that's controversial. I don't even have this game as an honorable mention for the exact reason that you talked about. It was 120 minutes of 0-0 game where Seattle had 3 shots the entire game. That is the exact game that soccer haters will point to say no scoring. This game is boring.
Oh, you're a
So
poet now?
yeah, I am. So yes, I understand that like Stephen Fry was unbelievable and he made the greatest save in MLS Cup Final history. But I don't think that erases the fact that Seattle were basically completely out of this game the entire game, and nobody scored the entire game. So I didn't even put it on my list. So I certainly wouldn't knock you for putting it lower on yours.
Yeah, the it's just the save that brought it to me. I when I thought about like top tens, this one originally was up there for me because I very vividly remember that save. And then I looked at the actual game like, oh no, this game actually is bad. I need to
Oh
put
yeah.
it low. Because it originally I had it at 3. And then I like when I made my first list of like, okay, I remember this game, this game, this game, this game, and I ranked them based off my memory, I had it at 3. And then I actually looked at them like, I can't keep this at 3. That's criminal.
Yeah, it's it TFC got FIFA'd big time in that game. Should we
Yeah.
go to 6 then?
Yeah, let's go to 6. I will send it to you. Let's see if we get one right here. Let's see if we get one together.
I mean, we will get the last one together. Number 6 for me is 2013 SKC versus RSL.
Okay.
So game finished 1-1. RSL scored in the 52nd. SKC scored in the 76th. One of the, you're going to make fun of me again for this, but one of the reasons that I put this on the list is because there were 36 shots in this game. These
Are you
teams were
sorry? Are you ranking this whole list just by how
no,
many shots were taken in each game? Like, what are
no,
we
because
doing here?
this would be like number 1 if that was the case. But what I'm trying to use that as a metric of is that it's not just like a like the Seattle TFC game where it's just kind of like a dull, like nobody's shooting the ball at all or whatever. Everybody's just passing it around. 36 shots. Teams were peppering the goal. I think the biggest reason I put it on this list though is because in PKs it finished 7-6, but that was after they took, and someone could double check my counting because I'm not sure if it's accurate here. You know what? Actually, I'll check it right now just to be sure. Yeah, there were 20 PKs taken in this PK shootout. 20 PKs. Can you imagine being an SKC or an RSL fan and having to sit through 20 PKs to decide who was going to be champion of the league? That's outrageous. I would need a bucket to catch all the sweat that I would be going through. So that PK shootout, I think, is the reason why I put it up this high. But it just seemed like a really exciting game, despite the fact that it finished 1-1 through 120 minutes.
I reserve judgment there.
Ooh.
Really reserve judgment there. I think that's even for your category. I think that's dumb low. I think that's dumb low. But
I have my
alas,
reasons for stuff higher.
yeah, you're gonna whatever. You're gonna put Atlanta at number one because Atlanta won something. Oh my goodness.
Largest crowd in MLS Cup Final
Oh
history.
my god. I will throw you out the window.
What's your six?
My number six is another one that we've actually covered already in MLS history. The 2001 San Jose LA game. The Cali Classico in the playoffs is always going to be cause for excitement. And especially in early MLS, when you could get an MLS Cup final between two sides in the same conference because the wild card placed you in just random parts of the bracket. This was always going to be a good one. And it was. Luis Hernandez, current EAFC 24 icon, would open the scoring in the 21st minute on a half volley after receiving the long ball over the top. Then just before halftime, Landon Donovan answers with a half volley of his own, sending a low service flying into the top corner of the goal to level the score before the break. The second half wouldn't really provide any change in the score, anything super exciting, so it would lead to another extra time match. And this time it was Dwayne De Rosario who picked up the ball on the left side of the field and immediately cut inside. With the defender backpedaling, he fakes a shot, then curls his actual effort just past the outstretched arm of Kevin Hartman to win the game with the golden goal in extra time. The reason I have it this high is because of the Cali Classico and the excitement. It made it for a game that I think if I were watching, I'd be glued to. Very much like Hell is Real in the conference finals this year. Something that even if the game wasn't like super awesome, the excitement of it being a Cali Classico just made it that much better for me.
I will reserve judgment
Nice.
until right now because that is my number five.
Nice.
2001 San Jose versus LA Galaxy. Literally, I think the entire reason I put it this high is the fact that it is a rivalry game. And I don't think with the way MLS is structured currently that we will ever see that happen again unless there's a restructuring. You're just not going to get two teams, two local teams squaring off against each other anymore because of the way it's separated between Eastern and Western Conference. So this is going to be probably the one and only time that you will see two local teams, a local rivalry facing off for the title, which is so exciting and so fun. Like even as a neutral fan, like you said, that would just be so exciting to watch. It was like watching the Cincy Columbus game. Like neither of us have a dog in that fight, but man, was that game so exciting to watch. So yeah, plus tack on the fact that it was a extra time golden goal on top of that. I mean, what a game.
Yeah. I really enjoyed covering it. I think I recovered it because I think you covered it in MLS History Retold, and I recovered it while writing the book. Spoilers for anybody listening. Um, so I enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good game, and was very excited to see that kind of make its way in and beat out other spots. My number five is, you guessed it, another one we've covered in MLS History Retold, and it's the first ever one. 1996 DC versus LA. Why not jump back to one of the best games in MLS final history? We've covered it, as I mentioned, but just for those of you who have, I don't know how somebody hasn't seen that episode because, I mean, we're massive. But if you haven't and you're listening to this for the first time, the Galaxy would get out to an early lead through a headed goal from Hurtado 5 minutes into the match. It would be pretty dull until the second half came through, and then it would pop off. Chris Armas, everybody's favorite MLS manager, returned to prime Messi, drove past four players and double the lead in the 58th minute. DC digs their heels in and gets one back in the 71st minute through Tony Sane in an unmarked header. Then LA nearly kills the comeback in the 78th minute, but Kobe Jones clips the crossbar of an empty net for the most part, and DC remained in it. Then 3 minutes later, LA would be made to rue the miss as a free kick was punched by Campos straight into Sean Medved, whose first effort was saved really, really well by Campos, but the rebound falls right back to him, and he taps it home to level the match. The game would go to extra time, and it would not take long to see the golden goal just 4 minutes into the extra time period when Marco Echeverri floats a ball into the LA box from a corner kick, which current U.S. Soccer Hall of Famer and top 25 MLS player of all time, Eddie Pope, would climb highest to reach and head it past Jorge Campos's near post to win the championship for DC in the first ever MLS match. The excitement, the moment of it all being the first ever one where the league needed it to be massive and it delivered. The goals in the rain that we didn't even mention it here, but we mentioned it in the episode where the game had to be moved because there was a nor'easter and like 10% of the fans didn't even show up because of all the crazy weather. I mean, it had it all. It was such a good game. And I think it's definitely a top 5 final.
I think you've put that criminally low, but to each their own.
What do you have it at 4?
No, that would be a funny transition though.
That would be, wouldn't it?
At 4, I have got 2003 San Jose versus Chicago. 4-2 San Jose win, the highest scoring MLS Cup for 19 years until last season where it was tied. 6 goals in an MLS Cup final is crazy. That's going to be exciting for anybody that is not a Chicago fan. It's going to be exciting for San Jose. It's going to be exciting as a neutral. And that's regardless of whether or not like these goals were super timely. But the best part about it for me was they were trading goals for a while. So it wasn't like San Jose ran it up 4-0 and then Chicago gets a couple of like consolation two goals towards the end of the game and like that's it. No, it was San Jose in the 5th, San Jose in the 38th. Chicago pulls one back. It's 2-1. San Jose responds back to make it 3-1. And then only 4 minutes later, Chicago responds back to make it 3-2. So every time San Jose is scoring to look like they can pull away and just end the game, Chicago scores back to keep it interesting. San Jose gets their 4th in the 71st and are able to see it out from there. But Chicago's ability to keep it close and just the sheer number of goals scored, I think would just make this a very exciting game from a neutral's perspective, which I think was a big factor for me here.
I'll be honest with you. Overlooked this one. I kind of scrolled through pretty quickly, and I think I missed it when I was doing my research because it does seem like a fun game. I don't think I'd have it this high. It might have snuck in maybe above the Portland game or the LA game in 9 or 10 because I think, again, it wasn't a like last second massive winner. But yeah, it looks like a fun game. It looks like something I would have enjoyed and definitely probably should be in the top 10, maybe lower, 8 to 10 range. But I'm here.
Excuse to knock NYC out.
Listen, I tried real hard. I'm not gonna lie. I had them in honorable mentions for a while, and all the other ones I had were just kind of meh. Yeah, so that brings me to my number 4.
Yep.
Which was 2010 Colorado versus FC Dallas in extra time. Again, one of these ones that was super, super exciting. Like from the start, less than 30 seconds in, Atiba Harris hits the crossbar after Matt Pickens tips his shot high. And then just constant chances after that. And the first goal didn't come until the 35th minute. George John makes a run down the right side of the pitch, sending the cross into David Ferreira, who finishes it with a lot of confidence and gives Dallas 1-0 going into the half. Then in the 57th minute, RBNY killer Connor Casey collects the ball in the box, gets run over by Kevin Hartman. As he's on the ground, the ball falls to his right foot, and he just swings from the ground and tucks it away to make the score level. Dallas would control the rest of the match and nearly took home a winner in the 86th minute after the ball came off the post and stayed out. They'd go to extra time to decide it, and the only chance came in the 107th minute when Mak Kanji, former Red Bull striker, dribbles into the box and tries to poke one through to a player on the far post. George John tries to clear the ball out and ends up sending it into his own net for the only MLS Cup final to have an own goal. Matt Kanji would actually tear his ACL in that same play as he's stretching for a ball, somebody fell on his knee, tore his ACL. Ball goes in the goal. Everybody's celebrating. He's just laying there on the ground because he just tore his ACL. But he contributes to a goal that gives Colorado their first MLS Cup in history. To me, I think the nicheness of it, where there's an own goal, a player gets a serious season-ending injury from the goal that he helps create. And two teams that you don't usually see in it, right? A lot of it's always DC, San Jose, Chicago, LA, Dallas, and Colorado. That's just kind of fun to me. I think I would have enjoyed that just as a different game. Uh, so yeah, that's my go for this one is its uniqueness. The only MLS Cup final to have an own goal, and it was a fun game. It was enjoyable.
I hate to be the one to burst your bubble, but San Jose Chicago 4-2 also has an own goal.
Surely not.
It surely does.
Somebody lied to me during my research because they said very, very clearly it was. Oh, it might have been the only goal to end, an own goal to end the game. That might have been the one.
That I believe.
I might have
Definitely.
misquoted. Let me double check the. I may have misquoted here because I originally wrote it down as the only one to end, but
I would be very surprised if it was the only own goal in an MLS Cup final.
no. Wikipedia says the first in MLS Cup history. But
Well, Wikipedia also has an own goal marked down for this Chicago game.
that's why Wikipedia is not a trusted resource. Everybody.
Okay.
Because I feel like I remember reading when because I read about this before, and I feel like I remember reading that it was the only own goal to end like to win a game, like game winning own goal. But then I read this again, and I had to change my thoughts. So I might have been misled there.
I mean, I'll keep it real with you. That feels crazy high. I didn't even consider this game at all.
I'll keep it real with you. Don't care. Didn't ask.
That's fair. It's your top 10 list.
You're right. Because I think what you do is you take things that are like, oh my god, look. I bet you Atlanta is your next game, which is going to be
You don't know
criminal.
that.
Yeah, I could put a decently sized bet on it and at least hedge my bets and not be wrong.
Oh, well, I wish you put a decently sized bet on it because I would be collecting on that.
Oh,
Because
would you?
my number 3 is 2006 Houston versus New England. Finished 1-1, sent it to penalties where Houston would win. But let's get into the details a little bit more.
Well, it sounds like an MLS history. I
It
remember
does.
I've read that. I've read
This
that line
this is an
before about
MLS
editing.
history. There is an episode on this, so you can just go listen to that. I'm not going to rehash that whole thing, but
We haven't covered this yet, have we?
we have, yeah,
Oh my god, yeah, we are. We're 2007, aren't we?
we have covered this
Man,
indeed. I remember I spoke
that's
about
right.
it. We might have both spoken about it. Who knows? But 90 minutes, it was 0-0. I understand that that's boring, but we got 2 goals in extra time. That is super rare for an MLS Cup final. Super rare. 113th minute, Taylor Twellman gives New England the lead. And surely that's going to end the game. New England's going to see it out and win their first ever cup. However, straight from the kickoff, Houston drive down the field and find Brian Ching to tie the game immediately. New England's was in the 113th minute. Houston's was in the 114th. Game goes to penalties, where who else but Brian Ching would win it in penalties to win it for Houston in their first ever season. I know we talked about this. It's not the same as Chicago winning it in their first season. However, it was still technically the first season of Houston Dynamo soccer, and they were able to win the championship in it. And not only that, the cherry on top of it all, they won this while playing in Texas. The final was in Texas. That seems amazing. I can only imagine the atmosphere when Brian Chang scores the goal to level it in extra time. It must have been nuts. So yes, the game was a bit boring up until it got late, but man, this game exploded when it got to extra time.
Connor,
Andrew.
I'm just gonna tell you
Uh-huh.
that feels like we finally got one right.
Oh yeah,
because at number 3, I've got 2006 New England versus Houston.
that is massive.
Love it. Exactly your points, right? Rated so highly for me because of extra time and penalties. Game was end to end for most of the match. Big saves coming from Matt Reese and Pat Onstead to keep it 0-0. Then in the 113th minute, Ano Smith, one of the worst members of the worst Red Bull team in history, the year 3 years before he gets traded here, plays Taylor Twellman in on goal, lines up, tucks away his chance, and celebrates what he must think is the moment that he finally did. Finally took a cup back to New England. 60 seconds later, they concede. Like everybody is
Probably
still.
not even 60 seconds. It was probably even
I think
quicker than
I think it was
that.
like 57. I think I counted like 57. Everybody's all celebrating, having the time of their lives. And then Brian Ching's like, hold on one sec. Ting heads that thing past Matt Reese, and we're back where we started. Get into PKs. Both shooters in the first 2 rounds make their shots. Matt Reese, the goalkeeper for New England, was the second shooter, which was insane. Darrow scores, Pat Noonan misses, Twellman scores, Brad Davis misses, level again, Brian Ching scores, and Jay Heap steps up and sees his shot held by Pat Onstead as he picks it up and runs to the corner to celebrate Houston's MLS Cup. Absolute limbs, as you mentioned, in Dallas's stadium, which I thought was kind of weird because I think it was Dallas's stadium, wasn't it?
I think you're right. I think it was in Dallas. Yeah.
Yeah, there it is. Um, Shocked faces at the home ground of FC Dallas, which I'm sure would have been really funny because I'm sure a bunch of people came out as Dallas fans supporting New England just to get hyped and then absolutely distraught when it happened. Um, but yeah, if I'm watching that games, I'm throwing things through my window. Like that is just absolute scenes. Massive game. Love
That's
it.
crazy.
Unfortunately, we're not gonna have the same top 3, but I'll ask you what your number 2 is.
My number 2 is 1996 DC over LA Galaxy. That's literally like that's the exact game that we just watched Cincy and Columbus play, except it was in the final, in the first ever MLS Cup final, and they were doing that. Like, do you not remember how hype we were during that Cincy Columbus game? That game was insane. That was an amazing game, one of the best conference finals games. And this was in the first ever MLS Cup. Galaxy are up 2-0 with in the 70th minute. Surely they'll see it out. DC scores in the 73rd, then score again in the 81st to send it to extra time. And then, as you said, Eddie Pope with the header in extra time while it was golden goal. So the goal wins it for them. DC complete the 2-0 comeback to win MLS Cup. Late goals, dramatic comeback, first ever cup. I mean, that is insane. To me, it was, even though it was the first one, it was the best until a certain other MLS Cup final happened. And it was easily the best for me until the other one happened.
I can agree with you that I might be able to bump it to 4. Maybe, maybe I can bump it to 3, but I'm not bumping it over my 2 or my 1. I
Well,
think it's a.
I know what your 2 is, so
I know you should. I think it's a good game. Like I enjoyed it, but the difference for me is this was 96 MLS where the rivalry really hadn't been cemented yet. You're talking about Hell is Real this past weekend. Yeah, that game we were hyped because we knew what it meant to this, the city, to the fan bases. Here it was the fan bases weren't as um like set yet, like they weren't as dedicated. Like if DC didn't win this game, you're not going to have people going off like really upset like I'm sure a bunch of FCC fans were. Same thing with LA. Like LA knew they were coming back. Like LA knew that this was going to be a group that wins a lot. Just wouldn't have the same feel for me.
good point. I think that's fair.
My number 2, and I think is criminally low on your list, is 2013 SKC versus RSL. Absolutely nuts. And I'm just going to give you the breakdown here. 25 minutes in, CJ Sapong denied from close range from Armando. Minutes later, Jimmy Nielsen makes a meal of some service out wide, punches the ball backwards towards an empty goal. Robbie Finley gets the ball, hits the post, and it ends up in the arms of Nielsen. Just before halftime, they play a long ball over to Dom Dwyer. He's one-on-one with Ramondo, and Ramondo closes him down to deny him to keep the score 0-0 entering half. That's just the first half. That has more entertainment than like half the games we've talked about already. That's one half. 2 minutes in the second half, CJ Sapong gets gifted another opportunity to take the lead, but again, skies his effort over the ball. This would come back to hurt them as Alvaro Saborio would get on the end of a long ball and finish the half volley from 20 yards out to give RSL the lead in the 51st minute. In the 61st minute, it was nearly 2 as Kyle Beckerman's chance from distance is deflected and it hits off the post. This was nearly as agonizing as 10 minutes after that, when Javi Mo's effort catches Nielsen wrong-footed, hits the post again, and stays out again. So 3 different chances to go up two or three goals. They miss them all. And then they're made to pay. Aurelian Collin rises highest to meet a corner kick just 3 minutes after Javi Mo hits the post and levels the game at 1. Then SKC nearly wins the game on the last kick when Benny Failhopper gets on the end of a bouncing ball in the box, and it's tipped over the bar at the last second by Ramondo, right in front of the Cauldron at SKC's home ground, which would have been limbs. Last second goal in front of your supporters section in the MLS Cup Final would have been mental. Then we go to extra time. CJ Sapong, as he's done all game, gets under pressure, has the ball bounce in front of him, stretches out to try and poke it past the goalkeeper, and puts it over the bar. 1 minute before the end of extra time, RSL think that they have taken the lead. First period of extra time, I should clarify. RSL think they've taken the lead through a powerful Alvaro Saborio header, but is flagged off and waved away for offside, which was the correct call on replay. That's as close as they would come before they get to penalties. And as you mentioned, this penalty kick shootout was mental. Quickly into the shootout, SKC would go 2-0 in the advantage as Bieler and Nagamura would convert, and Saborio would miss wide, and Grabavoy would see his chance saved by Nielsen. Matt Beasler then steps up and is turned away by Ramondo, and Beckerman converts, making it 2-1 after 3. Failhaber and Plata both convert, meaning that if Graham Zusi scores, SKC wins. Spoiler alert, Graham Zusi doesn't score. He puts his chance over the bar, and RSL stay alive, forcing extra kick because Javi Mo converted his chance. The next 2 rounds see both teams scores, and then center back Lawrence Olam steps up and misses for SKC, meaning that 1 goal would win the cup for RSL. Sebastian Velasquez steps up and misses his shot. Into round 9 we go. Both players score, leaving it to the 10th round. If both these players score, we're looking at goalkeepers. Aurelian Collin would score the last goal, and Lovell Palmer would ring his off the crossbar, meaning SKC win their second MLS Cup in league history. End to end, chances being missed all over the place, goals being called back for offside, 20 shots and penalties. This game had it all. It was absolute scenes, and it was this was the number 1 game up until a certain other game. It just had it all in terms of excitement and all that stuff. Like, I couldn't put DC LA 96 over that. I just couldn't. I think I could probably put it at 3.
I think I would move it to 4 on mine, but I wouldn't put it further than 4 on mine.
You're out of your mind.
Just think we would drop it to 3. What's the difference between 3 and 4?
Oh, you're talking about DC.
No, I'm talking about the SKC game. I would move it up to 4 on my list.
No, so the SKC game, you put it 4? You wouldn't even make your top 3?
No.
You are out of your you don't actually this is why I need to fire you. Like, I need to find a legitimate host at this point.
Who wants to talk about number 1?
I'll give the rundown, I guess. The number 1 MLS Cup Final on this list, argued by nobody in their right mind, is the 2024 MLS Cup Final between Red Bull and whoever the heck they end up playing, because it's going to be 11-0. The team is going to walk off the field at halftime and not even bother playing.
It was good talking to everybody. This will be my last episode on the podcast.
Is that all it took? Is that all I
Andrew
needed?
Andrew will now replace me with Grace, and it will be the Andrew and Grace podcast from now on.
No, anybody who thinks that 2022 wasn't the best game in MLS history, let alone the best. I mean, there's arguments for better games, but MLS Cup Finals, nothing beats it. 3-3, LAFC versus Philly. LAFC wins in penalties. Let's just give everybody a quick rundown in case you're new here. At the end of this match, by the way, everybody and their brother agreed that this was the greatest final of all time. Like, there wasn't anybody who was like, oh man, like, I don't know, 96 DC was pretty good. Everybody agreed from the outset that bang, this game was mental. It was a bit of a cagey affair until the 27th minute when Kellen Acosta, playing at center mid for some reason, hit a free kick that deflects off the wall and past Andre Blake to give them the 1-0 lead. 10 minutes later, the score is very nearly doubled off of a really nice free kick routine by LA, but Blake does well to keep it out. Just before halftime, Philly get themselves a chance. Well, actually, it was more like 3 chances on a transition moment. But Kripo and the LAFC defense, as a mixture of Kellen Acosta and Denny Bouanga, would keep everybody out, and the half would end 1-0 with everything to play for. In the 59th minute, an Olivier Mbaizo long shot would turn into a brilliant key pass for Paniel Pazdag, who would convert one of his only chances that wasn't actually from the spot. Outside of the yellow card shown to Murillo for a strong challenge on Andre Blake, the rest of the game was kind of mid until the 83rd minute when everything kicks off. In the 83rd minute, it's Murillo again who gets highest on an LAFC corner and nods it home to give LAFC in the lead in front of the 32-52. Limbs are flying. Everybody's hyped. It's absolute insanity, which lasted all of about 2 minutes when Jack Elliott goes and does the same exact thing on the other end, except it was a free kick instead of a corner kick. Game level again. It's the 95th minute. 2 minutes of stoppage time left. LAFC had their MLS Cup winning moment on a platter when a free kick is headed back across goal to the foot of Ryan Hollingshead. He lines up, swings, and misses the ball as it falls right into Andre Blake's hands. That's how regular time would end, and we would go to extra time, which is where the scenes take place. In the 110th minute, Sebastian Ibeagha plays a hospital pass to Maxime Crepeau, who runs out of his box to challenge Corey Burke on a 1v1. He slides, Burke beats him to the ball, and catches Crepeau's trailing leg, breaking it in the process. As the medical team assesses Crepeau, Ismail Elfath goes to the VAR monitor and realizes it's red card dog show. And as he's being stretchered off the field, has to show him the red card. Talk about insult to injury. Goodness me. John McCarthy readies himself for action, gets himself ready to go. And as players restarted, Philly is given a corner kick. After the initial ball is cleared, the second service is headed towards goal from Jack Elliott. McCarthy makes maybe the second best save in MLS Cup history on that header, but the rebound falls directly to Jack Elliott, who nabs his second of the match and gives Philly the lead with 6 minutes to play in extra time. But oh no, the fun does not stop there. In the 128th minute, 128 minutes, Diego Palacios gets to the end line, floats a ball to the ever dangerous Welshman, except for when he plays the USMNT in 2022, Gareth Bale, who rises up highest, I mean, like a foot and a half above everybody else, and heads home the latest equalizer in MLS history. Absolute limbs, absolute scenes. The game goes to penalties. Now, John McCarthy, for those of you who don't know, has a really good history of saving penalties, but it's usually for Philly, not against them. And it's usually when they're playing Red Bull in the US Open Cup and not MLS Cup. Regardless, in PKs, both shooters would miss their first chance. Christian Teo, remember him? He had his saved, and Paniel Pazdag slipped and put his over the bar. The absolute last person you would think would miss a shot missed his penalty. Denny Bouanga would convert, and Jose Martinez would see his effort saved by John McCarthy. Ryan Hollingshead would score, and then McCarthy would save Kai Wagner's effort as well. The sub keeper saving 2 of 3 shots in the MLS Cup Final. You couldn't write a better script. And anybody who's seen MLS Season Pass commercial knows what happens next. Illy Sanchez steps up, and he's very smart. He's all in, bottom right. He steps up and scores the winner for LAFC. No hesitation. The greatest game in MLS Cup history.
Let me ask you something. Does the goalkeeper know which way Illy Sanchez is going?
Bro, he definitely knows, but he's smarter. All in, bottom right. I hate that commercial so much. That and the one about like what would I do if I didn't know? Get him off. I'm done.
Well, get ready. I'm sure there's going to be more of that in the cup final. So,
How will I know if we didn't?
yeah, that was hands down. I've seen a couple of good MLS games in my life, but that was hands down the best MLS game I've ever seen in my life. Honestly, it's probably the second best game I've ever seen as a neutral. I mean, it was
What was the
in
first?
2022 World Cup final.
All right. I might say something audacious here. This game better than the 2022 World Cup final.
I mean, clearly I disagree because I said it was my second.
Listen. I would actually argue this because this was. I think they were both great games, but I think this game's better.
I can see the argument. I think this one was a little bit more like chaotic.
Right. I would need to rewatch because I just rewatched the highlights of this game, but I said it back when the 2022 MLS Cup final or World Cup final happened. I was like, this is good, but did anybody watch MLS Cup final? Because it was the exact same thing, but better. So,
Yeah, I would say the MLS one was more chaotic and messy, but I feel like the World Cup final was just like two incredible talents, just punch for punch.
oh yeah,
It's
I,
it's all just going to come down to personal opinion, but I don't know. I just think World Cup is just a little bit more important than MLS Cup final, but
Euro snob.
I knew that was coming.
In terms of other MLS games, just off the top of my head, that I think rival this, Beckham's first game against Red Bull 5-4, I think is mental. The I think the FCC game we just watched is probably up there. And the other two that come to mind, they're both playoff games, just not final games. San Jose's comeback against LA in 01, I believe. And Montreal Toronto. The what was it, 5-3, I think it was, in aggregate, the double leg series. And I think one of them was down like 4-1. They came back to win 5-3 or something like that. 5-4. Um those are up there in terms of like best games ever, but I don't think we'll ever see an MLS Cup final as good as this one until Red Bull do it next year. So
The only game I can't remember, so it's not as meaningful of a game, and I can't remember the game exactly. But funny enough, it was also LAFC versus Philly. It was just a regular season game, but I remember it was insane. It was such a wild game. They were just scoring bangers on each other.
was that the Gleesneys from like 40 yards free kick?
Yeah. I got to rewatch the highlights from that game because I know there were other insane goals in that game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there were some
that's the only
great.
game I could like remember off the top of my. Well, obviously, like the Schlegel stuff, Rodrigo Schlegel stuff was
Oh yeah,
outrageous too.
Orlando City, New York City penalties is also up there as one of the best games ever.
Greatest PK shootout I've ever seen.
That's definitely up there. All right, well now we know what our next top 10 is.
Just
Greatest
playoff
MLS games of
games,
all
any
time.
playoff game.
Yeah, we could do playoff game. We could do games of all time, but
Oh, games of all time. You're asking me to go look through every game in MLS history.
well, I just want to include the Beckham losing to Red Bull 5-4 at Giant Stadium game. That's just what I want.
We
But then
can.
again, but we also could include Messi versus Cruz Azul in the 93rd minute.
Oh
Was it
yeah,
Cruz
that
Azul?
was
Yeah, it
insane.
was. Like all these games that are just you never think about until you start talking about stuff like this, and it's like, oh yeah, that's a good one too.
We can look
Uh,
into doing that at some point.
we'll have to. Yeah, we'll have to. Um, but yeah, thanks everybody for listening. We hope you enjoyed. Let us know what you think about our top 10 list. Really let us know what you think about our top 9 list. Because if anybody comes up and tells me that 2022 was not the best MLS Cup final of all time, you're blocked. So it'll be the last time you'll be talking to us. Thanks so much. Make sure you follow us wherever you get your podcast. You know when our next episode goes live, which will be MLS Cup preview and predictions. Make sure you follow us on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, to interact with us and hang out with us. Unless you want to tell me something about our list being wrong, because then you won't be interacting with us. And yeah, thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players Podcast. See ya.